Hi everyone, I've been a bit under the weather lately and so not able to do very much at the moment, but I thought I'd pull a few questions out of the bag because they don't take too much effort on my part. I went to the LGB Alliance first annual conference last year and afterwards I made a video sharing my views. Below that video appeared this comment. The LGB Alliance is an anti-trans group. I don't know why they don't like that fact being known. So I pointed out that not prioritising trans over LGB like Stonewall does not make them anti-trans, it makes them pro-LGB. What's wrong with that? I asked. But I never got an answer. In fact, he ignored me altogether in favour of an exchange with David Prince. But that's okay, guys. I honestly have never seen any evidence that those who founded or are deeply involved in the LGB Alliance are anti-trans, but then I suppose those who claim this mean that they don't agree with everything that is said by Stonewall or Mermaids or other organisations that promote gender ideology over basic human rights, particularly the right to be unashamedly same-sex attracted and to reject the notion that they should take someone's supposed gender identity seriously, not being prepared to accept a man as a woman or vice versa for all purposes is what is getting this organisation and its LGB supporters called haters and bigots and transphobes. To get on to the question, which refers to me in the third person, so I take it that it was directed at David rather than me. And that's okay too, but I'll answer it anyway. If the LGB Alliance is not an anti-trans group, then why is Peak Trans so interested in them? What? Because I can only be interested in things that are anti-trans? It's not just interest on my part, by the way. I want to support the LGB Alliance in their endeavours, and the more hate I see directed at them, the more I want to see them triumph. Seeing how the haters targeted them from their very inception blew my mind. Why is so much time and energy channeled into trying to bring them down? You don't have to support them if you don't want to, but other people do. Many LGB people feel the LGB Alliance is for them. So how about you just live and let live? Wouldn't that be the reasonable thing to do? Of course it would. And its detractors know it would, which is why they try to paint it as a transphobic hate group. If you repeat a lie often enough and loud enough, some people will believe it. And one of the gender cult's main tactics is to lie about other people and groups in order to try to destroy them, to destroy us, because they perceive us as a danger to them. Otherwise, they just ignore us. And they're right, actually. We are a threat to their power and influence. Surely, though, if they were the ones on the right side of history, they would be confident of winning this battle on the strength of their ideas, of their arguments, without needing to fight so hard to silence others with a different point of view. The term anti-trans, by the way, is imprecise. Like the LGB Alliance, I am anti-gender ideology. Calling that anti-trans is fine by me, actually, but it will be deliberately misinterpreted to mean hating all trans-identifying people just because they are trans-identifying, because that is what the cultists do. They deliberately refuse to distinguish between people who claim a transgender identity and the promotion of ideas that ensure those people are prioritised over everyone else. From the LGB Alliance website, we work to protect children from harmful, unscientific ideologies that may lead them to believe either that their personality or their body is in need of changing. Any child growing up to be lesbian, gay, or bisexual has the right to be happy and confident about their sexuality and who they are. That's why I defend the Alliance. As the mother of a lesbian who I absolutely believe would have been captured by this cult if she were an adolescent today, I will happily defend the Lesbian Alliance and any other LGB group or project for the same reason. Next. A question from someone new to the channel. Where exactly do you stand when it comes to transgenderism? Do you think it's purely a choice? Do you think people can be indoctrinated or turned transgender? When I first saw this question, it stood alone, and from it, it's not clear what the commenter means or understands by transgenderism. But he subsequently got into an exchange with David Prince again, in which it's clear he takes a transgender essentialist position, that is to say that some people are born transgender, which is arrant nonsense, in my opinion. When I use the term transgenderism, I mean either the ideology that holds that there is such a thing as gender identity and that it trumps the reality of sex in determining whether we are men or women. For the sake of clarity, I am more likely to call that gender ideology. Or I'm referring to the phenomenon of people claiming to be the other sex. Whether they call it a gender or not is of no consequence. Where I stand is that there is no such thing as transgender people in the sense of someone being born that way. And that's why I prefer the term trans-identifying whenever it's necessary to make that distinction that someone considers themselves to be transgender. In this video, trans isn't a choice, ? I said transgender is a label and it's a choice as to whether you decide to label yourself transgender or not. The thoughts and feelings that lead someone to adopt that label are not necessarily a choice, nor are they the same in every case. As we've seen from the so-called transbians, nor is the degree to which people pursue their physical transition and their gender presentation. The young lesbians who transition aren't driven by the same feelings as the middle-aged heterosexual husbands and fathers who do so, who are different again from the young gay men, who are different from the admittedly tiny number of young straight women who may well all be different from each other in terms of their motivations. As for the middle-aged women who transition, where are they? I can say that a large number of the stories I've heard from young women who at one time apparently really believed that they were young men who had somehow got born in the wrong body and sought to change it involve a background of sexual abuse or some other thing that made their lives as themselves seem absolutely unbearable. I know in Kira Bell's case, she came from a background of extreme neglect. In Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage, we read of the case of Benji, who was an extremely intelligent and talented young girl whose parents had very high expectations of her. The parents' marriage was falling apart, and together with her sister, Benji was a victim of occasional physical abuse. Her sister got into smoking pot and cutting herself. Benji got into social media and found the world of transgender identity, and in its loving embrace found what she saw as a means of escape from the stress and academic pressures of the rest of her life. To quote from the book, "I think it helped me dissociate from the person my parents thought I was or the person I was expected to be within my family." This is what is happening. Young people, especially girls, are using the notion of transgenderism as a way of dealing with the unhappy situation they find themselves in. So to answer the question, in the cases of young anxious, confused people, especially girls, it is absolutely the case that they can be groomed into believing that they are transgender. This isn't what I think. It's what I know from my very extensive reading and listening to young people who claim that is exactly what happened to them, as well as by the research carried out by Lisa Littman. A couple of things from the conversation that commenter had with David Prince. Plenty of studies showing that transgender people's brain structure and neurochemistry are different from cisgender people. This was posted under the very video in which I said this. And K2's next sentence is, there have been scientific studies proving that transgender people's brains match their identified gender rather than their sex. Again, this is a claim to which I have devoted an entire video looking at the studies in question and showing that this claim is flawed. The studies do not show what they are widely reported as showing, so I won't repeat the arguments here. Go check it out. In this comment, leaving aside the reference to delusional psychosis, we are told that labelling people with gender dysphoria as mentally ill is just dishonest and insulting. That's harsh. I mean, how is mental illness an insult? Plenty of people who claim to suffer from gender dysphoria say that it is, in fact, a mental illness. I highlighted two of them in a previous video called Homophobia Repurposed? One of them was Blair White, who has since done an interview with the Trigonometry Guys in which he repeats his personal belief. Quite a number of detractors who post here make it clear that they consider transgender to be a synonym for gender dysphoria, that it means exactly the same thing. It doesn't. Some people who are distressed about their sex, their bodies, and the expectations placed on them do nothing. They don't call themselves trans. Some who are apparently not distressed about their bodies call themselves transgender. My personal belief is that transgenderism, by which I mean the phenomenon of people either claiming to be or wanting to appear as the other sex, or in most cases both, is in many cases a symptom of a mental illness, deep depression, whatever. But sometimes it's a paraphilia, and sometimes it's a result of social contagion and wanting to be in with the in crowd. I hope that's clear enough. Now, the next thing is not so much a question as an appeal. Please don't call trans people a cult. I appreciate that whoever says this, and it gets said quite a lot, hasn't seen all of my videos, but let me make it clear for the zillionth time, when I use terms like cult, ideologues, genderists, genderloons, gender nutters, I'm not talking about all trans-identifying people, many of whom are in agreement with me that gender identity does not trump sex, and who are just as horrified at the tactics employed by the cultists, many, perhaps most of whom are not trans-identifying, at least not in any meaningful sense. And by that, I mean they won't be having any kind of medical intervention. I believe they are sometimes called trans-trenders. My impression is that most of them call themselves non-binary or some such thing. In fact, I think it was my friend Miranda Yardley, who is a trans-identifying man, whom I can be seen here putting in my signature headlock move. It was Miranda from whom I picked up the term trans cult, though I prefer to say gender cult because so many of them call themselves cis. The reason I am calling people who are deeply immersed in and promoting gender ideology a cult is because they behave like one. If I can quote Benji from this book again. The gender ideology world she inhabited was a cult, she insists, because, quotes, when you're inside you believe non-reality and you disbelieve reality. And she uses the term brainwashed about herself. Hope that helps. The final question, well, there are two from the same person that I pulled out of the bag. Firstly, what are the gender-critical concepts you most value that aren't related to trans issues? I'm not sure about gender-critical concepts. That sounds a bit highfalutin, as if gender criticism is a comprehensive philosophy rather than just a label stuck on people with quite a diversity of views, but who agree that gender in the sense of traditional ideas about how boys and girls, men and women should be is regressive, and disagree with the notion that gender identity trumps biological sex. I go along with the label, but I don't like it much. I prefer gender abolitionist, meaning that in an ideal world, there would be no gendered ideas about how people are supposed to think and look and behave, but are just accepted however they are and not given a hard time for being non-conforming as long as they hurt nobody else. Next. What is the most productive conversation I ever had or seen someone else have with a trans rights activist? I have never had or seen anyone else have a productive conversation with a TRA. I've never even seen a TRA attempt to have a productive conversation or to say anything remotely helpful. They aren't capable of productive conversations with people that they despise because they strongly disagree with them. I am frankly astonished at the question and why the questioner imagines the possibility of me personally, my having had a productive conversation with people, my only experience of whom has seen them being at the very least snarky and rude, but most often bullies, abusive and even violent. That's it. Hopefully I'll feel better soon and we'll be back with another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.